Welcome to Ziegenfuss University, and this is our special apocalyptic eclipse edition. So people in church stop me, they're all nervous, they're shaking. There's going to be an eclipse, and there was an earthquake a couple of days ago in New Jersey. Obviously, if God strikes New Jersey with an earthquake, it's a sign of the end, isn't it? The end time event. So I thought it might be interesting to get a little perspective here and talk about earthquakes and eclipses. So that's going to be today's ZU, okay? Now, when we do this, the first thing to start out with this. Let's start out with a text here. And the text is taken from the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 13. This is called the Little Apocalypse. Little, small. What's the big apocalypse in the New Testament? The book of Revelation. So this is the little apocalypse, and since we're in the Gospel of Mark this year, I thought this might be a good place to start. So here we go. This is Mark chapter 13, verse 8. The entire chapter is apocalyptic literature. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom shall rise against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places, and there shall be famines and troubles. This is the beginning of sorrows. And you go on, and in addition to earthquakes, there's things like the sun will be blotted out, so that's eclipses. There is no Hebrew word for eclipse. And why would that be? Well, what is an eclipse anyway? This is the earth, this is the sun, here's the sun over here, and here's the moon. The moon comes this way, and it blocks out the shade or the sunshine on a narrow strip of earth, okay? So scientifically, we know what an eclipse is. Now, what did they know back in Bible days?
Not much.
Remember, when you read the Bible, you can't say, it's 2024, I watch Net Geo. I'm an expert in science. They don't have science, right? So what did they think happened when the sun was blotted out?
God died.
Thank you.
Yeah, or you know, like here I have some interesting pagan notions here. Okay, they're pagans, right? They don't know. Okay, first of all, when you read the Bible, you have to focus on time and space. So this is the time they're in, and most people traveled maybe 5-mile radius of their house, so they didn't have a world perspective like we do. Do we have a world perspective? Yeah. You turn on TV, and if something happens, there's an earthquake in Iran or something, we know about it within like 20 seconds of it. Okay, we're all linked together. In the old days, it might take a year and a half for news of an earthquake in China to reach the West. Okay, so you have to understand, the world is smaller than our world, and they focus on their experience, which is their time, which is now, and their space, which is, I don't know, the Sea of Galilee, let's say. Okay? So that's a very important thing. And from a narrow perspective, if all you see is what you can observe around, say, a 5-mile radius of this building, let's say, is that a good way to do science? What's one of the things that made the scientific revolution pop in the 16th century? Here's what it did. Ready? They had lenses. Okay, they grind lenses, and that gives you a telescope where you can look up, and a microscope where you can look down. So we see there's a whole world that's not visible to the naked eye. With a lens, a microscope, you can take a drop of pond water, and there's all kinds of life and activity in there. Or you can go the other way, you can look up, and how big is the universe? 14.5 billion light years across. We think the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Okay? And did they know that in Bible days? Nah, they thought the Earth was, maybe 5 or 6, 7, maybe 10,000 years old at the most. Okay? And why? Because they're basing their science on observation. Aristotle, who writes about all kinds of things, he writes about physics, and he did remarkably well considering the fact he didn't have any scientific instruments, telescopes and microscopes, and he writes about science, right? 4 body humors, balance, and so on. So you have to go, okay, we have to go back pre-scientific revolution. And what do some people think? Okay, Thales of Miletus, okay, this is 625 to 547 BC, thought that earthquakes were caused by tensions between the earth and the water. Okay, remember, they believe there's 4 elements, you know, air, ether, earth, and water, and fire is in there somewhere, and the tension causes earthquakes, okay? Pliny the Elder thought that he was a great observer. He died when Mount Vesuvius, no, when Pompeii, you know, the town of Pompeii was wiped out by the explosion in 79 AD. He went up the mountain to observe, to see what was causing it, and he died in that. So he's like checking it out. That's a pretty good thing, though. You know? He thought that, he called earthquakes underground thunderstorms. I think that makes sense, right? You know, kind of an underground thunderstorm, right? How about the Norse mythology? Well, they thought that it's a violent struggle between the god Loki, who's the mischief, strife, tricker, and Balder, the god of beauty and light. So it's a conflict among the gods. The Greeks thought that Poseidon, Neptune in Roman, okay, who's he? Remember, 1/3 of the world is controlled by Zeus, that's the air, okay, and Olympus. The underworld is controlled by Pluto, okay, and the sea is controlled by Poseidon, and they're 3 brothers, okay. So Neptune is the cause of earthquakes. Isn't that interesting? Now, why would the Greeks say that? Well, they kind of live, you know, on the coast, and they make a living in the Aegean Sea, you know, boats. So for them, if there's an earthquake, the sea is disrupted, tsunami waves, that kind of thing. So they attribute it to him. I like Japanese mythology. How do they explain earthquakes? Well, Namusa, who's a giant catfish, causes earthquakes. He lives in the mud beneath the earth, and he's guarded by the god Kashima, who restrains the fish with a stone. And when Kashima lets his guard go, then the catfish thrashes out and causes violent earthquakes. Yeah, that's pretty good, right? So, in other words, we would look at these and say these are preposterous because we're monotheistic. There's one God. These are polytheistic people, and they're trying to explain. They use mythology, mythos, to explain things that they can't understand. Okay, people want to understand, so they create these mythoses to try to explain it rather than scientific. Okay, now let me talk a little more about earthquakes here. Earthquakes are in the Bible all over the place. Okay, and maybe before we do this, let's talk about this. All right, Jesus asked his disciples. His disciples asked Jesus, well, what signs are going to be for your coming? There'll be wars and famine and epidemic disease, and there'll be earthquakes. These are the beginning of sorrows, Matthew 28. Okay? The Apostle John wrote about a great earthquake in the future. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 6, verse 12. That's the 6th seal. Remember there's 7 seals in Revelation? This earthquake will be a precursor of the greatest earthquake since man had been on earth. That's the 7th bowl being emptied out, the 7th seal. And that's called the Armageddon earthquake. The future Armageddon earthquake, or Messiah's earthquake, is associated with the return of Christ in Jerusalem. Acts 1:9, Zechariah 14:11 described severe topographical and geological changes on the earth. Okay, so there's like this cosmic stuff going on at the day of judgment and Christ's second coming. And there's all kinds of text on this. There are at least 17 earthquakes mentioned in the Bible. And usually the earthquakes are associated with like major events when God acts. Things like Noah's flood is an earthquake. When Abraham and Lot separated, right? When Lot chose Sodom and Gomorrah and Abraham chose the high ground and went the other way. When Moses received the law on Mount Sinai, there's an earthquake, right? A theophany. God's provision in the conquest of Canaan, he sent an earthquake to disrupt the Canaanites. vindication of Hebrew prophets, there's earthquakes. When Jesus is crucified, there's an earthquake when he died on the cross. At the resurrection, there's an earthquake. What else? And there's also earthquakes mentioned at end times. So, history, archaeology, and geology confirm independently that many of these earthquakes mentioned in the Bible actually happened. Okay, and why is that? Well, again, if you look at the map, right, Israel is located in a very interesting place. Okay, remember, you have Europe is Japheth, sons of Noah. Africa is Ham, right, son of Noah. And Shem is the Middle East, Asia. Well, where these three intersect is where Israel is. The Fertile Crescent goes this way. So you start here. This is the Jordan River Rift, it's called. It's like a rip in a baseball, like a baseball seam. It goes here all the way down into Kenya. It's like a major rift, okay? And the Hudson River. The Dead Sea is the lowest spot on Earth. Lowest spot on Earth, 1,400 feet below sea level. Death Valley is 800 feet below sea level. 2,800 feet below sea level. So it's deeper than Death Valley. And it's a rip in the Earth's surface. Well, guess what? These are called tectonic plates. So there's a plate here and a plate here, and they rub together, and there's earthquakes, Turkey, all through the Middle East, all the way down into Kenya. We also know about the Pacific Fire Rim. Okay, what's that? You start at the Tierra del Fuego, at the tip of South America, and go all the way up the Andes Mountains, Chile, okay, all through Central America, Guatemala, El Salvador, they have earthquakes there all the time. Up California, the San Andreas Fault, around to Alaska, the Aleutian Islands, they have earthquakes there. The Anchorage one from 1964, Glenda and I actually went and surveyed some of the damage that's still visible, right? And then goes around the ring until Japan, they have hellacious earthquakes. Taiwan, and then down into the Philippines. That's called the Pacific Fire Rim. So the tectonic plates rub, and there's volcanic activity and earthquakes associated with that. Now, notice there's nothing about a giant catfish escaping. Okay? Why do we know this? Well, again, we know this because we look at the world scientifically through a lens, and we look at it globally. Okay? So we know there's earthquakes here and there. Okay? Very important. All right, so let's do some earthquake facts here for a little bit. When people get nervous about things, historical events, you have to have perspective. Right? That's why you want to read history. That's why you want to know a little something about geology, a little something about science. Don't panic. God is on the throne. Always remember that. Okay. So earthquake facts. The Jordan Rift Valley, right? We showed you this on the map, right? It's in the middle of a place where there's earthquakes historically, like over and over again. There's earthquakes in this area. It is estimated that there are around 500,000 earthquakes. How many earthquakes? Each year. Yeah, 500,000 earthquakes. And are they increasing in frequency? See, we tend to think, oh, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. No, it's about the same. There's no uptick in earthquake activity. So, but why do we think that earthquakes are increasing in frequency?
Because we never had one here.
Well, you watch CNN or you watch the news, and it's like, oh, earthquake in Haiti. Oh, earthquake in New Jersey. And because, again, we tend to look at the world we think that it's all about us and it's our time and our space. So we think the second coming is going to be during my lifetime, and we think that things have never been worse than they've ever been. Things are getting worse and worse, and we think there's more earthquakes, and the eclipse of the sun is a sure sign of the end of the time. Right? See how that works? So we don't. So the solution is get perspective. Right? Instead of looking at the world through down here, you look at it through the God lens, up, down. You look from God down. You don't look at it from your viewpoint. Because our viewpoint, we're like peeking into a keyhole, trying to describe the contents of a room or something. You can't do it. Our perspective is so limited. Okay? So there's 500,000 earthquakes each year, and about 100,000 of these can be detected. Most earthquakes are, on the Richter scale. They're like 1, 2. In Oklahoma, they have earthquakes there all the time because they have fracking there, and they have a lot of like small earthquakes. Well, does that mean that fracking is evil or something? Well, no. It's just that we have better seismic measuring equipment now. Remember? Did we know about a drop of life in the pond water? Not until we had a microscope. Did we know about the size of the universe? Not until we have telescopes. So if you have better collection of data, guess what? You're going to find more earthquakes. So a lot of those small earthquakes, 1.0, 2.0, nobody would have detected it or even been interested in it. But now, because we have seismic equipment all over the place, every time the earth moves a little bit, oh, it's an earthquake, oh, end of the world as we know it. See how that works? Okay. Just like this one. Yeah, you've heard of the saying, garbage in, garbage out. Okay. Is global warming a real thing? The answer would be no. Why is that? Where do we get the temperatures from? Like, what's the temperature in Chicago right now?
32.
Is there a thermometer somewhere? Where is it? It's probably at O'Hare Airport. What's O'Hare Airport? It's a concrete, cement, asphalt place with a thermometer. Are temperatures higher in areas where you collect data on concrete and asphalt? You ever notice when it gets hot in the summer, it's always like 110 in Newark, but it's like 80 degrees or 90 up here in Rhinebeck. Well, why is that? Because they have cement down there. So the places where the thermometers are, tend to be like airports and urban areas. It's not an accurate measurement of what the temperature actually is. So depending on who collects the data and who interprets the data, that kind of thing. Okay, kind of interesting. Minor earthquakes occur frequently around the world. California, they have earthquakes all the time out there. They're probably laughing at the one that happened in New Jersey. 4.8 is a joke compared to California earthquakes. Alaska has earthquakes. El Salvador, Mexico, Guatemala, the Pacific fire ring countries. Indonesia, the Philippines, Iran. They had a hellacious earthquake, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago. 30,000 people were killed in one earthquake. And why is that? Why is it when there's an earthquake in Haiti, 200,000 people are killed, but the same one would be in Japan, the same size, and maybe one person is killed in Japan? Why is that? Because the Japanese have a lot of money and they're smart. And when they build buildings, they actually put the building on pads so that the building moves and you don't have 50,000 people killed when the building collapses. Poor people live in Haiti. How do you build a house in Haiti? You take cinder blocks and you pile them up, and the nice rigid cinder blocks, when there's an earthquake, they're pulverized and the whole house collapses and kills everybody in the house. So poor people can't afford the luxury of building houses that are protection against earthquakes. So what's the solution? Well, if I was Haiti, had an earthquake when in 2010, killed a couple 100,000 people, it's still a wreck. It's still a mess, despite all the aid going in there supposedly, or some people just raised the money and kept the money, right? So you want to get Japanese engineers in there and have them clean up the mess and rebuild the place so that it doesn't happen again, because they really know what they're doing. Okay, so earthquakes are common all over the world. U.S. Geological Survey estimates that since 1900 there have been 18 major earthquakes in the United States. That's 7.0 to 7.9. And one of the largest ones is an 8.0, right? That happened, a few years ago. So this is, all right, so in other words, earthquakes are common. Let me see here. Let me see. Here, let me talk about some other earthquakes here. I don't want to burn up all the time here. We have to talk about eclipses a little bit too. The prophet Amos talks about the great day of the Lord, Amos 5:18 through 20, and a great earthquake. It's Amos 1, 2, 3, 4. All through the book of Amos, he talks about earthquakes all the time. Now, did that happen? Yeah. Around 750 BC, which would be in sync with Amos's prophecies, there was an 8.2 earthquake in this region. Is 8.2 bad? Yeah, that's really bad. That's a big earthquake, right? And that's typical of the Jordan River Rift here. And they've actually uncovered archaeological evidence of that. Amos's earthquake is one of the largest yet documented in the Holy Land. So when you do biblical archaeology, it's sedimentary layers, the strata, and you dig down to that level, and there's like total destruction and burning from that. You've heard of the Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? The Qumran community lives down in the Dead Sea, okay, right on the fault, and they had a big community there, and they had springs bringing water into them, and there was an earthquake there. And Josephus in 31 BC, okay, what year? 31 BC. So Jesus is 7 BC to 33 AD. So it would have been within the memory of people who were living in Jesus' time. And Josephus says that 30,000 people died in that earthquake in 31 BC. And Herod the Great, who is like Hitler, right? He's a destroyer and a builder at the same time. He put a lot of money in to try to rebuild after this devastating earthquake that hit the region, right? Nero started the fire in Rome and burned it down so he could rebuild it and make it better. That's how Herod thinks, okay? So the Judean earthquake centered in the Jordan Valley, Jordan River Rift again, about 7.0 in the Richter scale, right? And Josephus says 30,000 killed, and so on. With the crucifixion of Christ, we have reports of an earthquake. After 3 hours of darkness at midday, we'll talk about that in a second, April 3rd, 33 AD, Jesus said, "It is finished," and immediately the sanctuary in the temple, the curtain was torn, and a great earthquake occurred. Okay, this is according to Matthew chapter 27, 51 to 58. It seems that the crucifixion earthquake would have been around a 5.5 on the Richter scale. And there's evidence of this in the Dead Sea. If you go to the Dead Sea and you do a core sample and drill down, you can tell by the strata when earthquakes occurred, okay, by the deposits that are put down. Okay, so kind of rather interesting. Let me see here. There was another huge earthquake, 746 to 749 AD. Now there's a town called Bet Shean. Okay, what is that? It's in Galilee, and there's no evidence that Jesus ever visited there. He didn't visit Tiberias either, which is another big Roman city. And this place has been inhabited since, I don't know, like the days of King Solomon. So, and it's different layers, right? Well, they had an earthquake, series of earthquakes around 747, remember the airplane, AD, okay? And it totally destroyed the city. And it's 7.6 on the Richter scale. How bad was it? It was so bad that they abandoned the city. So if you go there now, they have these big marble columns laying down on their side. The temples are all ruined. Everything is destroyed. Okay. And remember, when you're in Israel, if you see marble, what does that mean? You're in Galilee, you see marble. What does it mean?
It was brought in.
Yeah, they don't have marble in Israel. It comes from Turkey or Greece. So somebody took these marble blocks and hauled them from Turkey or Greece up the mountain, the hill to Galilee to build this city. And there's marble everywhere. Marble columns everywhere, marble. It must have been quite a thing. But marble, when the earthquake, it all came down. And it's still there. Big piles of rubble all over the place. Right? Let me do another interesting historical earthquake, because this has theological implications. All Saints' Day. Okay, when is that? November 1st. When? 1755. What do you do in a Catholic country on All Saints' Day? You go to church. Holy Day of Obligation. So everybody's in church about 9:30 in the morning, right? What happens? Huge earthquake in Lisbon, Portugal. Huge, right? And the entire cathedral collapsed and killed all the people that are in there. And it killed about 60,000 people in Lisbon. And then it created a tsunami wave that wiped out all the ships in the harbor, and the wave went as far as Brazil. huge tsunami wave, right? It's called the Great Lisbon Earthquake.
Wow.
And what's interesting about Lisbon, to this day, a lot of people from England go to Portugal on vacation. It's like us going to Florida or something. It's easy to get there, inexpensive, right? So there are, and Portugal is in Europe. It's one thing having an earthquake in Turkey or China or something. It's like, who cares, right? No, this is a European earthquake. It's right under your nose if you're in England, okay? And it's close to France, right? So they estimate this was a 7.7 earthquake. And what did European Enlightenment philosophers think about this? Okay, you've heard of Voltaire before? He wrote Candide. Okay, so Voltaire is a deist, so he doesn't believe that God intervenes in human history. Okay, so Voltaire doesn't like the Catholic Church. He's French. He hates the Catholic Church because he thinks they corrupted the, So he says, what kind of a loving God, what kind of a God who's supposed to be in control of the universe, what kind of a God would send an earthquake on All Saints' Day when everybody's in church? The poor peasants are in there praying and the whole thing collapses on them. So this is called a theodicy problem. In other words, why do bad things happen to good people? Okay? So, and why would Voltaire think that? Well, Voltaire, like most Enlightenment people, think that man is inherently good. Okay, well, what does the Bible teach about anthropology or human nature? The total depravity of man. Why is the world messed up? Because sin and death entered the world with the fall of Adam and Eve. Enlightenment people would say Adam and Eve in the garden didn't fall. They were enlightened. They were elevated because now we know of the difference between good and evil, and we're like God. So they like that aspect of it. So they reject the idea of the fall. So why do we have earthquakes then? Why were the 60,000 people killed in Lisbon because there's an earthquake? Well, they were probably killed because
There was an earthquake.
sinful, greedy people use cheap building materials when they build the cathedrals. And that's what led to the death of the peasants that were in there. Right? The world is broken and fallen. The world's messed up, And so people are known to be corrupt and evil and So innocent people die when the big boys are corrupt. It's a principle of law of nature, right? I used to live in Massachusetts, in UMass. They built a 17-story library at UMass. Very impressive, right? Unfortunately, the bricks were falling off, hitting the students when they tried to go into the library. And why is that? Because the mafia had the cement contract, and they didn't use the correct quality of cement. Instead, they used cheap cement, and as a result, they had to take all the books out of the building and rebuild the entire building. Yeah. So why were the students hit in the head with bricks? Not because God hates students. Well, that could be, but no, it's because the mafia is corrupt. And so are the politicians that took the bribes. See? So you have to be careful, remember, Satan is the accuser of God. Right? So you hear this all the time, Why did God let 9/11 happen? Well, God let 9/11 happen because it's our own fault. It's a series of things we've done that lead to war. God doesn't cause wars. Satan causes wars. Sin and death entered the world with the fall, and because of that, the world's messed up. Right? And it's what is it our job to do as Christians? Clean up the mess. Use your head. Maybe talk to some Japanese people that can rebuild your cathedral so it doesn't collapse next time there's an earthquake. So that works? So God gave us a head and reason that not to get caught up in our emotions, but to look at it rationally and go, why was there an earthquake and why did all these people die? Right? I think it's fascinating. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he's another one he's a deist, who hates the Catholic Church, who hates the Christian religion. His thing, he said, the reason that so many people died in the Lisbon earthquake had a big impact on intellectual history in Europe. Okay, everybody's like, we're talking about, just like everybody's talking about the eclipse today, everybody's talking about the Lisbon earthquake back in the day. So Rousseau says the reason so many people died is because cities are evil and country is good. That's his big thing, you know. That we're corrupted by a bad environment, which is a city, and you had all these people living in a city, and when there's an earthquake, they're all killed. If they're all living in the country, well, only a few would have been killed. You wouldn't have 60,000 people killed at one time. So he's one of these people where, for Rousseau, he thinks that evil is caused by bad environment. So what do you do if you have criminals in New York City? You send them up the river to the country where they can be rehabilitated and then released on parole. That's a Rousseauian idea. The country is good, cities are evil. So for him, oh yeah, the Lisbon earthquake was caused by people living in cities because cities are evil. So it confirms his bias or whatever, you know, right? So I think it's very interesting. Let me see. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. All right, there was also another notable earthquake in 1906, the San Francisco earthquake. Was that interesting? Yeah, that was a huge earthquake, maybe 7.0 on the Richter scale. What happened there? The building, San Francisco in the 19th century is a boom town. What does a boom town mean? Do they have building codes there? Do they have like maybe good urban planning or something going on? No, it's sort of like you stake out a piece of land, you put up a store or something, and you build it there. Well, guess what? When they had an earthquake, the whole place went down, and then it caught on fire. So the fire after the earthquake was worse than the earthquake. Basically, it burned down the entire town. Like the Great Chicago Fire, same kind of thing. Again, is that God's fault? You know, it's human beings that we want to make money, and we're willing to take bribes and kickbacks and cut corners. As long as we make money, we don't care if there's a tenement building that, 100 people get roasted to death. As long as we make money on it, who cares? So that works? So sin is the problem here, not God. And then let me do another one here. In 2010, the Haiti earthquake, 7.0 in the Richter scale. Is that bad? Yeah, that's pretty bad. If a 7.0, I think they had an earthquake in Japan about the same time, it was 7.0. And in Japan, maybe like 10 people were killed. In Haiti, it's like 100,000, 200, we don't even know how many people are killed. Why is it we don't know how many people died in Haiti?
They can't find them.
Because they don't have a government. Haiti is a hellhole since 1805. It's the oldest black republic in the Western Hemisphere. 1805, okay? And so what is Haiti? But Haiti has been a bastion of corruption and revolutions and coup d'etats since 1805. You've heard of Woodrow Wilson before? Okay. He was president from 1913 to 1921. So in 1916, he sent troops to Haiti to restore order because there was like chaos in Haiti. What's going on in Haiti right now? There's chaos in Haiti. They have gangs who they barbecue people. They do cannibalism. So the gangs freed all their cronies in the prison, and now they're all fighting in the streets against the army of Haiti. It's a disaster, right? So, and how many people live in Haiti? Last time I checked, there were 8 million people. And a couple of weeks ago, they said there's 10 to 12 million people living there. And what's the problem? It's an island, okay? And they're poor. How poor are they? Their per capita income was like $500 a year. How bad is that? It's like $1.50 a day or something like that. What would your life look like if you had to live on $1.50 a day? When I say this to my college students, they go, my life would be a lot better. Because they don't have any money, right? No, that would be really bad, right? So is there an economy there? There's no economy. So if you're like a 20-year-old Haitian black dude there, you live in there, guess what? There's no economy. There's no future. There's nothing for you to do, okay? And so if you're poor, how do you cook your food? Yeah, you don't go down and buy like heating oil or propane because you can't afford it. So you go up here and you cut down a couple trees and you cook, you make your food, right? What happens when 12 million people cut down the trees and cook with it? It's called deforestation. What happens in a tropical region when it rains, like a foot of rain? It washes away all the topsoil. And where does the topsoil go? Into the ocean. So what happens when the topsoil from Haiti goes into the Caribbean Sea or whatever? It kills all the fish. So they have no fishing industry. The agriculture is destroyed because they ruin the soil. They cut down all the trees. There's no employment. There's no jobs. Basically, it's a worst case scenario. And how do they live there? Do they have houses there? Yeah, you know, sort of like, I don't know, if you're rich, you know, you buy some cinder blocks or something, and when an earthquake hits, that stuff all comes down because they can't afford, you know, buildings that are earthquake proof. It's a cascade of horrible things that happen, boom, 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 like that, you know. What should they do with Haiti? Here's my solution, okay? These people speak French. Send 2 million of them to France. We'll take 2 million, put them in New Orleans. That would cut the population down. You know, you want to get the population of Haiti to about 1 million.
Well, French and the people in New Orleans are going to hate you.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, I don't like them, so it works out fine. No, the bottom line is you can't have 10 million people living in a small space like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing you could do. You know, giving them money doesn't help. You know. So anyway, it's a hot mess in Haiti, and it doesn't go away. It's in the news constantly, right? All right, now let's talk about some other earthquakes here. Let's talk about China for a minute, because this is kind of interesting. When you think about China, there's 1.4 billion people, right? Okay. Is World War II bad? Yeah. How many Americans were killed in World War II? 465,000. About 110,000 men were killed in the Pacific Theater fighting the Japanese. Is that bad? That's not good. You know, my father's cousin was killed at Negros Island in the Philippines, and you know, so guess what? Yeah. How many Chinese people were killed in World War II? 20 billion. 20 million. 20 million people. 20 million. And it started when the Japanese that took Korea in 1910 decided they wanted Manchukuo, 1931. So the Japanese were doing a job on the Chinese from 1931 until 1945 when they surrendered. 20 million people killed. And is that a lot of people? It's like New York City has like 8 to 10 million people. So it's twice the population of New York City, all dead. Right? So when you think of Chinese history, everything is move the decimal points over. It's unbelievable. How about the American Civil War? Was that bad? Yeah, that's 1861, 1865. We lost, the old number was 620,000. It's probably 750,000 people killed in the Civil War. That's really almost 1 million people. That's really bad. At the same time, in China, they had a thing called the Taiping Rebellion. No one's ever heard of it before. It's a big civil war that happens in China. Yeah. How many people killed? 20 million people killed in the Taiping Rebellion. At the same time in the American Civil War. So when Chinese stuff is like, you move the decimal point over, right? Well, they had an earthquake, January 23rd, 1556, right? And an estimated 1 million people were killed in that one earthquake. They also had an earthquake in Chile, 9.5 on the Richter scale, 1960. And that's one of the largest, highest magnitude earthquakes in history. Earthquakes result in various effects, ground shaking. Okay, soil liquefaction. This is one of my favorites, okay? What's that? You have a bottle of ketchup, right? Like this, and what happens? Nothing happens. If they hit it like this, they shake it like this, and finally, boom, it all comes out at the same time.
Yeah.
That's called liquefaction. So what happens with an earthquake, it's like the bottle of ketchup being shaken like this, and that solid that you're standing on suddenly turns to liquid. And people are like swallowed up in it. And that happened up at the Anchorage, Alaska, where the the land dropped from up here to like the basement, liquefaction, like that, because of the shaking, right? And then of course you get, crevices, cracks, like this. It shatters concrete buildings and so on that aren't built correctly. And what happens? The buildings fall on you, so people get crushed or killed by falling debris. And then often it triggers fires and then tsunamis, right? There was a big tsunami in, Indonesia, right? Went about 10 years ago now. Have you ever seen the video of that?
I have.
It's like you're at the beach, and look, you see a big wave coming. If you start running, it's too late, you're dead. The wave is like a 60, 70-foot wave, and it hits, and then it goes out again. And the hitting is bad, but the going out again is really bad because the water, millions of gallons of water are rushing at like 200 miles an hour. It sucks you out into the sea, they'll never find you again. That's a tsunami wave. So earthquakes can really do some considerable damage, right? All right. So let's do a couple principles here, and this also will apply because I'm going to talk a little bit about eclipses here in a second. Principle. People tend to localize. We think the end is going to happen in our particular time, in our particular space. Okay? So the earthquake in New Jersey, it's obviously a sign of the end. So you have to have perspective. Well, there's a lot of earthquakes, 500,000 earthquakes a year. Why is that particular one of interest to us? Okay? Here's another principle. The vast majority of doomsday predictions are pure speculation, myth, false prophets, and uninformed hysteria. Okay? I could do a 3-hour lecture about the history of lunatics that get on the radio. Herbert W. Armstrong, The World Tomorrow, and Plain Truth Magazine. Harold Camping, who predicted the end of the world in, 1993, right? And then he predicted the end of the world again in 2011. And I was teaching in the city at a small seminary down there, and my students were, they were from Africa, African students, and they saw these billboards in Times Square about the end of the world going to be, October 19th or whatever, 2021, whatever, 2011. And they go, do we have to do our final? Because I said, I don't care if the world ends, you have to hand your final in, right? They're trying to get out of it, right?
Oh my God.
So a lot of people, one guy in Staten Island, he liquidated his pension and used the whole thing to buy billboards warning people of the end of time because of Harold Camping. Yeah. Hal Lindsey wrote The Late Great Planet Earth, stole 30 million copies. 30 million copies of this book, translated into 30 languages. And his big thing was 1988 is going to be, that's going to be the doomsday scenario. Israel became a state in 1948, plus 40 years is 1988. So a lot of energy went into that, right? So these people, and what do they want you to do? Send your money, tax-deductible contribution, to Pasadena, California, Pastor Mark Ministries. And people are attracted to this stuff. They watch it on TV. Herbert W. Armstrong had something like 390 radio stations around the country. I remember listening to him when I was a kid. And his son, Garner Ted Armstrong, he sounds like Paul Harvey on the radio. Reeks of credibility, right? So you have to be careful. These people they want your money. They're charlatans, they're heretics, they make stuff up, they take things out of context in the Bible, they get everybody whipped into a hysteria, and then when the date passes, oh well, I guess I'll just keep your money. If the world's going to end, why do you need my money?
Yeah.
Right? Put it on your credit card since you think the world's going to end. Right? Then you don't have to pay it back if you're right. Okay? There's no way of knowing which particular eclipse might be connected to the end times. Okay, so there are Bible verses talking about the sun will be blotted out and so on and so on. But how do you know that is it the one today?
No.
And ready for this one? Where is the point of totality? The path of totality? Well, it goes to through Texas, and it kind of comes up this way, kind of cuts across Buffalo, and it goes up to Vermont, and then, okay. Well, how about the people that live in like South America or something? They're going to miss the end, the second coming of Christ or something? Only people who live in the path of totality? Only people from Buffalo are going to be saved. Everyone else is in big trouble. Like, what's special about Buffalo? Is that's the center of the universe here all of a sudden? See how that works? I mean, which eclipse? Right? It's important to remember that Jesus says what? Ready? You should, like, get a tattoo of this. Burn it into your heart. Matthew 24:36. No one knows about the day or the hour. What does no one mean? That means Herbert W. Armstrong. It means Hal Lindsey. It means Harold Camping. And there's a litany of hundreds of these people. Okay? So they don't know. Cyrus Schofield in the Schofield Reference Bible, they don't know. Okay? No one knows the hour, not even angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Therefore, what are you supposed to do in the meantime?
Be ready.
Keep watch. Be ready. Okay? Because you do not know the day that the Lord will come, right? So you must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour that you least expect. Are we expecting him to come? Yeah. It's going to be at 3:19 when the sun is blotted out over Buffalo. That's a sure sign that he's going to come. Okay? The point, right? What are we supposed to do? Okay? We're supposed to live a holy and godly life as you look forward to the day of God and speeding to its coming. The day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt away in heat. We know that we will see a new creation. This is 2 Peter chapter 3. We're supposed to live our lives in light of Christ's return. It means living in holiness and anticipation. Trying to calculate the end times based on astronomical phenomena or earthquake frequency is not what the Bible wants you to do. Okay, got that? Okay, now let's do a little bit of eclipse action here. Okay. Oh yeah, they also predicted the Y2K event was going to trigger the end times. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Another disappointment, right? It didn't even make my computer go, crazy. Okay, let's do a little eclipse action here now. We spent most of the time on earthquakes, but they're related, you know. Okay, eclipses. Whether the sun or the moon are not rare. Okay, you got that? They're common. They're not rare. Okay, and a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse, they're different. You know, the sun gets between. You know, so they're not rare, right? There are 2 to 5 solar eclipses that can be viewed somewhere on the earth every year. See? The one that we're all hot and bothered about happens to be visible from like your lawn chair. But there are 2 to 5 other ones. So if you want to get in the car or go to Australia or something, you could probably see one down there. Right? Every year there's at least one lunar eclipse of one type or another. Since the time of Jesus spoke the words recorded in Matthew 24, there have been thousands of eclipses. Thousands of eclipses. Total and partial solar and lunar eclipses. Normal solar eclipses do not appear to be mentioned in the scripture. Why? Because they don't have the word eclipse in Hebrew or Greek. It doesn't, like, what do they think causes it? Remember, I talked about did I talk about the Choctaw people? I did. Their myth is that black squirrels are devouring the sun, and you have to make loud noises to drive away the squirrel to save the sun. So when the eclipse happens today, stand in your front yard and go like this. Ah! You're trying to scare away the squirrels. That would be my advice, right? If you want to be a good Choctaw, right? Maybe they're onto something. I don't know. Who am I to criticize them, right? The sun being blotted out, it's a miracle by God or something. Like, people interpret it as a sign from God, okay? In the book of Job, who commands the sun not to shine and sets the seal upon the stars. Isaiah, the stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. The rising sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. He described an eclipse. When I extinguish you, I will cover the heavens and the darkness with stars. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon will not give light. Isaiah, I will make the shadow cast by the sun go back 10 steps Okay. Joel, the earth shakes, earthquake, the sky trembles, and the sun and moon are darkened, eclipse. See, the two are linked together, right? The sun will no longer shine. The sun and the moon will be darkened, and the stars will no longer shine. Joel 3:15. Okay? So, in other words, eclipses are not like, they're common all over the world, and it just happens to be, it's passing by our area, and we think it's all about us. It's not about you. Remember the first line of A Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren? It's not about you. Okay? So there are eclipses all the time. So if you look at the big picture, think, well, yeah, there's going to be an eclipse in Australia or something. Well, just because Buffalo is darkened doesn't mean it's the end time event. So that works? Extremely important, okay? And we have like 5 minutes left here. Because I want to get us out of here by 2 o'clock, because I know you want to see the eclipse, stare into the sun. Yeah, then you'll be on the prayer list because you're blind. George will be, I can't see. Fortunately, God sent Val to make sure George doesn't look at the sun.
Stop looking at the sun.
Hey, look, Val, it's an eclipse. I guess this is probably, are there any questions on this? Yeah, when you read this is the genre. Remember, when you read the Bible, you always say, what am I looking at here? It's not a narrative, it's a genre. It's called apocalyptic literature. Right? And if you want, I could do a whole thing on Revelation or something. I actually wrote my master's thesis on Johann Ulrich Bengel, who predicted the end of the world June 18th, 1836. You missed that one. Right? And there's a long list. There's hundreds of people that have made predictions about the end of the world, end times. So you have to have a high degree of skepticism about this. No one knows the hour of the time. Just live with that.
No, but you know what? Jesus said to watch
Yeah.
signs.
Yeah.
So even though there are a lot of eclipses and earthquakes and stuff going
Yeah,
on, you don't know when it's going to be V1.
Yeah. It's okay. Okay. Watch the signs means like, don't stick your head in the sand and go, I'm religious. I'm just going to sit home and read my Bible. No. You need to read your Bible, but also read the newspaper and know what's going on in Haiti and know what's going on around the world. Read some books on science. No, don't be afraid that, oh no, it's going to be an eclipse. Oh no, the black squirrels are eating the sun or something. We're not. What I like about the Christian religion is that we smash superstition and pagan myths, right? And we live lives that our feet are on the ground, but our heart might be in heaven, but we're still functioning people. We're not completely neutralized, we just sit there and go, I'm just going to hide in my bunker and read the Bible and not worry about anything. No, you're supposed to be engaged in the world, and be aware of what's going on. Pay attention, My dopey college kids, they go to New York City and walk around with earbuds on and walk around like they're born yesterday and they wonder why they get killed. You have to be aware of your surroundings. And it doesn't just mean when you go to New York City to visit, be aware of what's going on like in the world, Fortunately, when I was driving on the New York Thruway, I went up on Saturday, they had one of those illuminated signs. It said, eclipse. So there's an official warning on the New York Thruway about an eclipse coming. I had no idea.
Oh.
And New York State put out a list of things you're not supposed to do during the eclipse. I love being treated like I'm a second grader.
Yeah.
It's kind of like survival of the fittest in action. People that look at the sun will be blind, and I'll go visit them in the emergency room. That's a great thing. So any questions? No? Going.
Okay.
I thought it was mildly interesting.